6, loving your neighbor. Now, I've given that talk a couple of times. That's one of my favorite talks because sometimes loving your neighbor is one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do. You know, so it's a challenge sometimes. But as Christians, we're called on to do that. And I would like to introduce our next speaker, Brother Dan Regalado. I've known Dan for quite a few years. I believe he entered Couples for Christ in 2008, right, brother? 2008? All right. Step on up.
Thanks, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, brother.
So, I'd like to thank Brother Andy and Brother Sam for inviting me to come and share my thoughts, share God's thoughts on this particular topic, which I think I share the same sentiment about it. It's my favorite subject, simply because it is God's commandment, you know, loving our neighbor. So, I promise to keep this brief because we have double talks today. So, loving God and loving our neighbor are the first two commandments that Jesus Christ gave us, right? So, it's actually the 10 commandments. And these two commandments are actually inseparable. There is no way on earth that we could say we love God, but we don't love our neighbors. Or simply put it, there's no way on earth that we could claim that we're Christians if we do not care about our neighbors. So not loving our neighbor is one thing, but not even caring our neighbor is another thing, right? So it is important for us to understand that our role as Christians is to always be available at all times, to be of service to our neighbors. And later on, I'll talk about what God and what Jesus thinks about who our neighbors are, because he's been asked. But what's the most important thing is, you know, we understand that these two commandments are very, very much attached to each other, that we cannot detach one. We can't be Christian by convenience and say, I'm a Christian or I'm a Catholic, I go to church, I practice communion, I go to confession, I give tithes, I give this, I pray for them. I pray for the people in Nepal. I pray for the people in the Philippines when the typhoon hit them. Oh, I pray for that guy who's begging there. Oh, I pray for that people who's on the street begging. Or I pray for that family in the car, like this afternoon. I thank God, because as we were coming here, my daughter and I were praying the rosary, and all of a sudden on Western Center, as you know, the road there was very narrow. There's a white vehicle stalled on the side of the road, when you know the road is already cramped out. And I saw the guy trying to replace his tires from the side, with all traffic going this way because it's a blind curve. And what really struck me is there is family inside, kids and everything. So what I did is I told Fatima, I said, let's stop and let me call 911. So I called 911, I talked to them, I said, could you please send a cop there because there's an accident waiting to happen. So, do I know them? I don't. But this is a reminder, so in other words, what makes me think of this is the fact that I believe that this is an obligation that we have to do every step of the way. Whether we are at home, we are outside, we are in the car, we always have to believe that it is our job. As Jesus wants us to do, we have to help. And like what Tito Banji said, you always need to make sure that you're available to be of service to your fellow men or to your neighbors. Now, the most important thing is we have our model. And it's a tall order to follow. Our model being Jesus Christ. Right? His love, what it says is like this. We need to love our neighbors not as much as we love ourselves, but as much as He loves us. That's tough. Because don't we love ourselves? Don't we love ourselves? And if we think that that's the yardstick, we should be doing great if that's how much we should be loving our neighbors. But the Lord says, love your neighbor as I love you. And how much did He love us? Right? He loved us so much that He died on the cross for us. He didn't even know us. He didn't even know every one of us. And yet, without resistance, He died on the cross. So we need to understand always that when we are out there and when the opportunity comes to help, let's not hesitate. Let's help. Let's help. There's one time I was bringing my wife to work at the airport. One morning, I saw a guy walking on, I think it's Freeport, on the side of the road. I know that the next destination is probably about 2 miles away. He was going that way as I was going towards the airport, and so when I came back, I saw him. He was still walking. So I asked myself, I said, should I pick this guy? I don't know him. So, as a human being, you always have that fear that this person might be bad. And then you end up being hurt, at the very, very least. But the Lord, again, came into my mind and I said, you know what? There is no such thing as bad thing happening to us if we think nothing but to help. So I pulled aside and I said, sir, do you need a ride? So the poor guy crossed the street and then came. So I asked him, I said, where are you going? Why are you walking? Because I've seen him a couple of times. And he said, I work at the McDonald's by William Dite. And I said, why do you walk? And he said, my car broke down. I live in Dallas. And I take the train to the airport. And I take the shuttle to the parking place. And I walk about 3 miles. I said, do you do this every day? And he said, yes, I do this every day. So I said, I'd be happy to give you a lift every time I see you. And I don't know him. And when I dropped him off, what he said to me, he said, sir, I don't encounter people like you all the time. And there's no way for me to repay you. But he said, let me pray for you. And I said, thank you so much. And I said, that's all I need. Because anyway, after I drop my wife to the airport, I go to St. Francis with Tita Jing and Tita Banji, and I see them there, so it's it's not out of the way. So I dropped him off. 2 days later, I saw another gentleman walking on the street, different guy. A little bit I was a little bit worried about this guy because this guy was not as, your first impression is like, this guy looks good, looks tame. This guy is not. So I said, Lord, I think you're basically pushing the envelope a little bit. So what I did was, first day I passed him. Anyway, he's close to wherever he's going. He's about walking towards crossing the interstate 121. But the next day I saw him way far. So I said, let me see. So I stopped and I gave him a ride. And then I said, where are you from? He said, I live in Oak Cliff. Bad neighborhood.
Yes.
That's what I hear. Well, so I said, where are you going? He said, I am a driver of a forwarding truck. So I said, where do you work? He said, I work close by, about 2 miles away to Panalpina, one of the big forwarders. So I take the train, same story, take the train, take the bus, and then I walk 2 miles. So I sent him there. The same thing, the guy said, God bless you, thank you so much for doing this. And it was raining hard. So in other words, what I'm saying is, in every opportunity that we have, we always have to think about these things, because you know what? Life is a wheel. Selfish reasons, as it may sound, you never know when it's going to come full circle, right? Not even from the people that you've helped, because you always look at paying forward. It's always like that. So, to Tita Vandy's point, I encourage everyone to always make sure that they make themselves available. You know why? Because the Lord always provides. And for those very close friends of ours, they understand what I'm talking about. They do understand what I'm talking about, that we are living in a miraculous life, our family. And we're blessed. We're blessed spiritually, which is the most important thing. But at the same time, we are blessed materially through our children being able to really, be successful in the simple things that they do. Like my eldest son is getting married on May 30th. He just moved into his new small house. I'm so happy for that. And I think the Lord is blessing us because we never hesitate, to always serve other people. So speaking about, loving your neighbor, it entails loving those people that you know, especially the closest to you. Because you think loving your neighbor, you're looking at basically just your neighbor. No, it includes your family members, your children who are moving, so you have to basically lift all of those stuff going to their place. We did that last night, by the way, so I said, thank God for reminding me. So, the two greatest commandments, as what I was saying, is that, love your neighbor with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and with all your strength. There is no hesitation whatsoever. There is no second guessing. There is no reservation of, I'm going to love my neighbor 20%, or I'm just going to give 80% of what I could give. No, give it all. Give it all. Because loving, especially almsgiving, my father-in-law always says, when it hurts, that's when the grace of God is flowing through you. Flowing through you. So it's very, very important. We are sending kids to school in the Philippines, very, very poor children. We've started doing this, I think about 12 years ago. We have some, by the grace of God, 3 have already graduated. All of them are teachers. I believe that sending them to school is good, so they're able to provide. Now we're sending kids to school. And I quit my job about 2 years ago, and ever since, I haven't found the job that I think would be great. But the Lord is providing. So my mother said, are you still going to send those kids to school? If I were you, I'll stop. I said, Mom, are you kidding me? Find more children. Increase it. Because we will send more to school. And guess what? The Lord continues to provide with blessings. And we are sending 3, now we have 3 college students in school. So never worry about your material possessions, because God will always give you. Maybe not too much, but just enough. Just enough to get you by. But it will make your life very meaningful. You will feel it, I guarantee you. That's the main thing. We live in this world not to amass a lot of wealth so that when we die, we can bring it with us. One of my favorite priests who is in St. Francis, I think Tita Vandy was there when he said, I have been a priest for 12 years. I have said many funeral masses. I have never seen a funeral procession going to the cemetery with U-Hauls and UPS and big truckloads of possessions going with the body. Right? All I see is this box containing the body of the person. And it's true. So it's very important. So let me fly through the characteristics of a Christian love, because this is pretty much where the core, of our the core of how we should love our neighbor. And you've seen this. Most of these things are from the letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. So love is patient, love is love is kind, those kinds of things. So, I'll go through some of this because most of it are very self-explanatory. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to you guys about is love is not jealous. In this world where we see people succeeding in various ways, the worst thing that you do is to be jealous or to be envious and say, you know what, I hope to God that later on I will be better than that person. I hope that this person will not succeed. Those kinds of things. It's the Lord gives us an opportunity to have a pure love and a selfless love. A love that is always ready to serve. So, love is not rude, or it's not rude, right? We should accord to honor and respect one another, praise, and if they do well, console, and if they do well and console them if they go badly. So most of the time, we're there, and if they don't do good, we don't say anything. But reach out to them and say, look, I understand that you had some failures or something like that. Don't worry. There's a better time. God has something better stored for you. Other people basically rejoice in wrongdoings of other persons. Let's not do that, because that doesn't go along with what the Lord teaches us about love. So the most important thing is we always should remember, I think, or imagine, always put in our minds Jesus Christ and the crucifix, because I think that's the purest love that we could ever see in this world. What you call agape, which is the sacrificial love, right? The love full of forgiveness. Now, this is very important. I think I've alluded on this earlier. Loving our neighbor is not an option. It is not a choice that we make. As I've always said before, it cannot be a selection, but it is a commandment from God that we always have to love our neighbor. I took this verse from the Bible. It says, I give you a new commandment, love one another as I have loved you, so you should love one another. Right? So, always remember, it is our obligation to help. We don't do this out of convenience. We don't do this when we think we can get gratification from the public and we can get recognized. As a matter of fact, the greatest thing when you do these kinds of things is when no one sees you and you help. And you help. So, who is my neighbor? There's a lot of passages in the Bible where Jesus Christ was asked, then who is our neighbor? And he purposely did not answer that, because he doesn't want to send a wrong message that this is my neighbor and there's an exclusion. So basically, what he's saying is your neighbor is anyone who needs help, whether they're family members, or they're friends, or they are people that you don't know, or even most interestingly, people that you do not like, or people that you don't like, that they don't like you. That's tough, okay? But despite of the things that you have, despite of animosities or things like that, they are your neighbors. If they need your help, you need to help them out, okay? So, and irrespective of the ethnicity, the race, the religion, and those kinds of things, you need to be able to help. And I think that's a very, very important thing, because the greatest form of evangelization as Christian is when you do such kinds of actions, because then you are being you're representing what the Lord wants us to do, which is basically helping people. So, the biggest question that we have is, am I being a neighbor to others? Are we being a neighbor to others? And how often are we being a neighbor to others? Right? So, in conclusion, so this is going to be a short talk. Did I break the records?
I think so, brother.
I wanted you guys to get the gist of this, but the most important thing is, in our everyday life, we need to envision the commandment, the first two, in a form of a crucifix. Yeah? Love of God, which is the upward arrow, and the love of neighbor, which is the horizontal bar. They are inseparable. You can't take them apart. Right? Now, all of these things, however, that I've discussed to you, are so difficult, if not impossible, if you are not under God's grace. If you do not believe, and if the Lord is not in your heart, naturally or supernaturally, if it's not in the fabric of your system spiritually, then loving your neighbor, the manifestation of you being able to help, is almost difficult, if not impossible, because you will be selective. It is not innate in your mind, right? So that's what it is. So, oops, sorry. Lastly, this is not an easy task, right? Helping people is always not an easy task. Why? Because sometimes it takes you out of your comfort zone. Imagine you being called in the middle of the night because one of your friends had an accident and you have to go and pick him up on the freeway or something like that. Imagine when you're going somewhere and you had plans already for that day, and then you got a call from a friend that you have to help someone who you don't even know, who this friend of yours met at a commissary or something like that. And this family just came from the Philippines with 3 kids, with no work, living in a hotel, and has nobody that they know in the DFW area. Those are the things that we need to understand. So it's always uncomfortable, but you know what? That's when you have what you call the plenary indulgence. My mother always says, when you do this, you'll have the indulgencia plenaria. I said, what is that, Mom? So now I understand what it is. It's basically your credit points in heaven, right? So you don't see a lot of these rewards here on earth. The best that you can get is a gratitude, expression of gratitude from the people, which is great enough. You don't need anything else. So, going back to the students that we're sending to school, you know what I always tell them? I said, guys, don't think of repaying us back. We do not need you to repay us back. Not that we don't need it, but I said, pay it forward. Send your family members to school. Emancipate yourself from the poverty that we have seen for a long time. And with the grace of God, they're starting to do that, right? So, it's very, very simple, and yet it's very difficult to do. But it's doable, and when you do it, the reward is definitely immense in heaven. So, let me end by giving you a story. This story I've heard through someone, and it happened here in Dallas-Fort Worth. It's speaking about loving your neighbors or being of service. There's a gentleman who's going for an interview at a hospital, I believe, in Fort Worth. He was driving on 360, all suited up, with necktie and everything. And as he was driving southbound in 360, he saw a stalled car on the road with a lady, obviously probably going to work, coming out of the vehicle and trying to basically replace the car, the tire of the car, because it blew up. So he was torn between stopping and missing his interview, which he needed the most because he hasn't been working for a long time. And just going for it and hoping that he'll get a job. So, what he did, guess what did he do? He stopped and he helped that lady, and then the lady went. So, it was 11 o'clock in the morning, his interview was 11:15. The traffic on Arkansas was horrible. There is no way he could have made it to the place. And he did not make it to the place. Okay? But still, he went to the office and he went to the receptionist and he said, I am so sorry, I am late. There's no excuse. If you want, I can go out, I can go back some other time. I was late because I had to help someone. And guess what happened? Guess what happened? The hiring manager was the lady he helped. Did he get the job?
Oh, yeah.
He got the job not only because he was fitted for the job, but he had the heart for the job. And you know, most of the time, what gets you the job is not just your acumen, it's not just your educational attainment and your qualifications, but basically your attitude to help. So let's always remember that. It's very important. It comes for circle. God works in mysterious ways. Not only once, not only twice, but every day in your life. Every day in my life. So why don't I want to share it with you? When you are under the grace of God, nothing will go wrong. Storm is there, just like what Peter said, but sometimes we're so weak, right? We doubt the Lord. And everybody does that. That's the characteristic of human being, and I'm part of it. But I've learned more now to trust in the divine intervention, that nothing will stop Him from helping us. Open up your heart, let Him in, and He'll take care of the rest. For that, may God be praised.